The restaurant in Lagos was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of expensive glasses. Tunde Okofor loved nights like this. Sitting proudly at the large dinner table, he entertained his wealthy friends with stories about business deals, luxury cars, and expensive trips. Everyone admired his confidence. Everyone except the quiet woman sitting beside him, his wife, Amara Okafor. Amara sat calmly, listening more than speaking. She wore a simple dress, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. To most people at the table, she looked like a quiet housewife who depended completely on her successful husband. Tunde suddenly leaned back in his chair and laughed loudly. "You all are lucky," he said to his friends. "Your wives actually help your success. Mine." He pointed his thumb toward Amara. "I married a poor woman who contributes absolutely nothing." A few people laughed awkwardly. Others looked down at their plates. The comment hung heavily in the air. Amara forced a small smile, pretending the words didn't hurt. She slowly took a sip of water and kept her eyes on the table. Inside, however, a storm of emotions moved through her chest. It wasn't the first time Tunde had insulted her like this. In fact, he had been saying things like this for years. What none of them knew was the truth. While Tunde bragged about his success, Amara had been quietly building something extraordinary. Every night, while the world slept, she worked from a small office at home, developing a digital platform that had slowly grown into one of the most promising tech businesses in Africa. For 4 years she had kept it secret, and the company she built in silence was now earning millions of dollars every single year. Amara Okafor had been underestimated for most of her life. People often looked at her quiet personality and assumed she lacked confidence or ambition. But the truth was very different. Amara was the kind of person who worked silently and let her results speak for themselves. Years earlier, she had graduated with a technology degree from the University of Nairobi. She was excited, full of ideas, and ready to build something meaningful. Like many young graduates, she believed finding a job in the tech industry would be the beginning of her dream career. But reality was much harder than she expected. Amara sent applications to dozens of companies across Africa. She attended interviews, presented her ideas, and even shared plans for digital platforms she wanted to build. Again and again she heard the same response. "We'll call you." But the calls never came. Some companies said she didn't have enough experience. Others said her ideas were too ambitious. A few people even laughed politely and told her she should try something simpler. After months of rejection, many people around her started believing she had failed. Even Tunde slowly lost faith in her. At first he encouraged her to keep trying. But as time passed and she still didn't have a traditional job, he began making small comments. "Maybe tech just isn't for you," he once told her casually. Amara didn't argue. She simply nodded and stayed quiet. What no one realized was that those rejections only made her more determined. Instead of waiting for another company to believe in her, she decided to believe in herself. From a small room in their home, she created a simple workspace with just a laptop, a desk, and endless determination. Every night after everyone else went to sleep, she sat there working for hours. She designed, coded, tested ideas, failed, fixed problems, and tried again. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Slowly, something incredible started happening. The digital platform she was building began attracting users online. At first it was just a few people. Then hundreds. Soon people from Kenya started using it regularly. After that, users from South Africa and Ghana joined. Without advertising, without a big office, and without anyone believing in her, Amara's idea was quietly spreading across Africa. And within 2 years, something even more surprising began happening. Investors started contacting her company. What started as a small idea on Amara's laptop slowly turned into something much bigger than she had imagined. The platform she created, called Ubuntu Connect, was designed to help businesses across Africa connect with skilled digital workers, developers, and small tech teams. At first, only a few people knew about it. But the idea was powerful and word began spreading quickly. Users started sharing the platform with friends and colleagues. Small businesses in Kenya began using it to find developers. Startups in Ghana joined the platform to hire remote designers. Soon companies in South Africa were signing up as well. Every week, more people created accounts and the numbers kept growing. Amara watched everything carefully from her small home office. Most nights she barely slept. She was constantly fixing bugs, improving features, answering emails, and updating the platform to handle the growing number of users. Sometimes she worked until sunrise, then quietly went to bed before anyone noticed how late she had been awake. Then something even bigger happened. One morning she opened her email and saw a message from a large technology company asking about partnership opportunities. At first she thought it was a mistake. But within a few weeks, more companies began reaching out. Some wanted to advertise on the platform. Others wanted to integrate their services into Ubuntu Connect. Soon payments started arriving. At first the money was small, just a few $1,000s from subscriptions and service fees. But month after month the numbers increased. 10,000 became 50,000. 50,000 became hundreds of thousands. Within a short time, international clients from Europe and the United States began using the platform as well. Businesses were paying large contracts to find African tech talent through Ubuntu Connect. Amara's bank account quietly grew larger every single month. But despite all this success she told no one. Not her friends. Not her family. Not even her husband. Tund continued believing she had no job, no income and no real future. He kept making small jokes about how he was the only one supporting the household. Each time he said something like that, Amara simply stayed quiet. She wasn't hiding the truth because she was afraid. He was watching. Amara wanted to see something important. She wanted to know who truly respected her for who she was, and who only respected money and success. While Amara's business was quietly growing into something powerful, her life at home told a very different story. To everyone around her, she was still just the quiet wife who depended on her husband for everything. Tund Okafor believed he was the successful one in the marriage. His job paid well and he loved talking about it. Whenever he met his friends or business partners, he proudly described his lifestyle, his expensive watches, his car, the luxury restaurants he visited. And somehow the conversation always returned to Amara. Sometimes he joked about her in front of people. "My wife enjoys the easy life," he would say with a laugh. "She just stays at home while I handle the real work." People would laugh politely, assuming it was harmless teasing. But Amara heard every word. Other times Tund compared her to the wives of his colleagues. Many of them owned fashion brands, beauty businesses or luxury boutiques. At dinner parties Tund would point them out proudly. "Look at Chidinma," he once said. "She runs a successful fashion company. Nada. Her cosmetics brand is everywhere now." Then he would glance at Amara and shrug slightly. "You should learn something from them." Amara would simply smile and nod. She never argued, never defended herself and never revealed the truth. Inside she just reminded herself why she had chosen to stay silent. But Tund wasn't the only one who treated her that way. His sister Kemi Adeyemi was even worse. During family gatherings, Kemi often made comments that sounded friendly on the surface but carried sharp judgment underneath. "So Amara," Kemi once asked loudly at a family dinner, "are you still searching for a job?" A few relatives looked uncomfortable, but Kemi continued smiling as if she had asked a normal question. "Don't worry," she added, laughing lightly. "At least my brother works hard enough for both of you." The room filled with quiet chuckles. Amara lowered her eyes and calmly continued eating. They all believed the same thing, that she depended completely on Tund's money. That without him she had nothing. And every time they underestimated her, Amara simply listened in silence. None of them had any idea that the woman they pitied was quietly building an empire worth millions. One evening, Tund invited several of his business partners to one of the most expensive restaurants in Lagos. The place was known for its luxury atmosphere, soft golden lights, quiet music playing in the background, and waiters moving gracefully between the tables. It was the kind of place where people went to show success. Tund loved places like that. He arrived confidently, shaking hands with his partners and ordering expensive drinks without even looking at the prices. Amara sat beside him, calm and quiet as always. She wore a simple but elegant dress, nothing flashy. To the people at the table, she looked like the quiet wife who simply accompanied her husband to events. The conversation was loud and full of laughter. Tund talked about business deals, investments, and how competitive the market had become. His friends shared their own stories, bragging about new contracts and profits. As the night went on, the waiter placed several expensive dishes on the table. The bill for the dinner was clearly going to be huge, but no one seemed worried. Then Tund suddenly leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "You know something funny?" he said, looking around the table. Everyone turned to him. He pointed casually toward Amara. "My wife here couldn't even afford this dinner if she came alone." A few people laughed, thinking it was just a joke. Tund continued, clearly enjoying the attention. "She would probably look at the menu and run away," he added, chuckling. "Good thing she married me, right?" This time the laughter around the table grew louder. Amara felt every pair of eyes slowly turn toward her. Some people looked amused, others looked uncomfortable. But no one said anything. She sat quietly, her hands resting on the table, her expression calm. On the outside she looked completely unaffected. But inside something had finally shifted. For years she had ignored the comments. She had allowed the jokes, the comparisons, and the constant disrespect. She had stayed silent because she didn't feel the need to prove anything. But tonight felt different. The humiliation wasn't just private anymore. It was public, loud, and careless. As the laughter slowly faded and the conversation moved on, Amara quietly picked up her glass of water and took a small sip. And in that moment she made a decision. She was done hiding the truth. About a week after that uncomfortable dinner in Lagos, Tun traveled to Johannesburg for one of the biggest technology events in Africa. It was called the African Tech Investors Conference, and it attracted some of the most powerful entrepreneurs, investors, and startup founders from across the continent. For Tund, it was the perfect place to network and meet people with money and influence. The conference was held in a massive modern convention center filled with banners, bright lights, and hundreds of professionals walking around in sharp suits. People were discussing new startups, investment deals, and the future of technology in Africa. Tund felt proud just being there. He shook hands, exchanged business cards, and spoke confidently about opportunities. That afternoon, the main hall began filling up for the keynote speech. Everyone seemed excited about the guest speaker. Rumors had been spreading all morning that the founder of one of Africa's fastest-growing tech companies would be speaking. Many investors were eager to hear the story behind the success. Tund found a seat near the middle of the large hall. The room slowly went quiet as the lights dimmed slightly. A host walked onto the stage and greeted the audience with a big smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "today we are honored to welcome one of Africa's most inspiring entrepreneurs. Her company has grown rapidly across multiple countries and is now valued at more than $80 million. The audience immediately began whispering with excitement. The host continued, "Please welcome the brilliant founder and CEO of Ubuntu Connect, Amara Okafor." At that exact moment, the large screen behind the stage lit up with her name. Tun's body suddenly went still. His heart skipped a beat as he stared at the stage in complete confusion. Then the side door opened. Walking confidently toward the stage, dressed in a sharp professional suit, was Amara, his wife. For a moment, Tun thought he was imagining things, but there was no mistake. The entire crowd stood up, clapping loudly as Amara walked calmly to the microphone. The applause filled the hall. People were smiling, cheering, and looking excited to hear her speak. Tun sat frozen in his chair, staring at the stage with wide eyes. The woman he had been calling poor and useless was now being introduced as the founder of a company worth more than $80 million. The applause in the hall slowly settled as Amara stood behind the microphone. The room was filled with hundreds of investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, all waiting to hear her story. She looked calm and confident, nothing like the quiet woman many people had underestimated. Tun sat frozen in his seat, his eyes fixed on the stage. His mind was racing. He couldn't understand how the woman he had been living with for years could be standing there as one of the most successful tech founders in Africa. Amara smiled gently at the audience before beginning. "Good afternoon, everyone," she said in a calm, steady voice. "A few years ago, if someone told me I would be standing on this stage speaking to all of you, I probably wouldn't have believed them." The audience listened carefully. "I graduated with big dreams," she continued. "I wanted to build something meaningful in the tech world. But after university, things didn't go the way I expected. I applied for many jobs, shared my ideas, and knocked on many doors. Most of those doors stayed closed." Some people in the audience nodded quietly. Many entrepreneurs understood that feeling. Amara continued speaking honestly about the difficult years, the long nights working alone, the moments when she doubted herself, and the many times people told her that her ideas would never work. "Sometimes," she said thoughtfully, "people look at someone quiet and assume they are weak or unsuccessful." The room became very quiet, but what they don't realize is that quiet people are often working the hardest when no one is watching. A few people in the crowd smiled and began clapping softly. Amara then explained how she started building Ubuntu Connect from a small home office with nothing but a laptop, determination, and a belief in her idea. She described the first users who joined the platform, the early challenges, and the moment the business finally began growing across different countries. The audience listened with admiration. Meanwhile, Tund felt a heavy knot forming in his stomach. Every word she spoke made him remember the jokes he had made about her, the times he had laughed at her dreams, and the moments he had called her useless in front of others. Now the same kind of people who once would have laughed were sitting around him, applauding her success. As Amara finished her speech, the room erupted into loud applause. People stood up from their seats, clapping and cheering. And in that moment, the truth that had been hidden for years was finally out in the open for everyone to see. When Amara finished her speech, the audience continued clapping as she stepped away from the microphone. Several investors and business leaders immediately walked toward the stage, hoping to introduce themselves to her. Cameras flashed, people congratulated her, and many were eager to talk about partnerships and future deals. Meanwhile, Tund sat in his chair for a few seconds, still trying to process everything he had just seen. His mind felt completely overwhelmed. The woman he had been mocking for years had just received a standing ovation from some of the most powerful people in the tech industry. Suddenly, panic rushed through him. He quickly stood up and pushed through the crowd, making his way toward the backstage area. His heart was beating fast as he asked one of the staff members to let him through. "I'm her husband," he said quickly. A few minutes later he finally saw Amara standing near a group of investors who were congratulating her. She looked confident, relaxed, and completely different from the quiet woman he thought he knew. When the conversation around her ended, Tund walked toward her nervously. "Amara," he said softly. She turned and looked at him calmly. For the first time in years, Tund didn't look confident or proud. He looked nervous, almost desperate. I didn't know," he said quickly. "I swear, Amara, I had no idea you built all of this." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to find the right words. "You should have told me," he continued. "If I knew about your company, things would have been different. I would have supported you. I would have been proud of you." He kept talking, apologizing again and again, explaining that he never meant to disrespect her. He said he was shocked, that he was proud of her success, that he had always believed she was capable of great things. But Amara listened quietly, her expression calm. As she watched him speak, a painful realization slowly settled in her heart. For years he had treated her like she was worthless. He had laughed at her, embarrassed her in public, and constantly reminded her that she contributed nothing. And now suddenly he respected her. Not because she was the same woman he had married, but because he had just discovered how much money she was worth. After the conference ended, Amara returned to Lagos. The flight back was quiet, giving her time to think about everything that had happened over the past few days. The applause from the audience was still fresh in her mind, but so were the memories of all the years she had spent being underestimated. When she arrived home, the house felt strangely calm. It was the same house where she had spent countless nights working alone in her small office while everyone else slept. The same house where people believed she had no job and no success. But now everything felt different. Her phone kept buzzing with new emails and messages. Investors from different countries wanted meetings. Technology companies wanted partnerships. News about her speech had started spreading online, and people were calling Ubuntu Connect one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Africa. Within just a few days she received offers for major international deals. Some investors were offering millions of dollars to expand the platform into Europe and Asia. Her small idea, the one she built quietly on her laptop, was now turning into a global company. Yet despite all the excitement, Amara spent a lot of time reflecting. She thought about the many nights she worked alone, the rejection she faced after university, and the moments when people laughed at her ideas. She also remembered the jokes Tund had made about her, the comments about her being poor and useless. For years she had stayed silent, believing that one day her work would speak for itself. Now that moment had finally arrived. Standing by the window one evening and looking out at the busy Lagos streets, Amara felt a deep sense of clarity. She realized something important about her life. She didn't need approval from anyone. Not from critics. Not from people who doubted her. And not even from the man she had married. Her value had never depended on what others believed about her. The woman who had once been called poor and useless had quietly built something powerful with her own determination. She had created opportunities for thousands of people across Africa and beyond. And now, with her company growing bigger every day, Amara understood one simple truth. She had built her own empire, completely on her own terms. Months later, Amara stood quietly near the large glass window of her new office in Cape Town. From the top floor she could see the beautiful skyline of the city, the tall buildings, the busy streets below, and the ocean shining in the distance. The view was calm and powerful at the same time, much like the journey she had been through. Ubuntu Connect had grown faster than anyone expected. What started as a small platform built on a laptop had now expanded across several countries in Africa. Offices were opening in places like Nairobi, Accra, and Johannesburg. Even companies in Europe had started partnering with the platform to find talented developers and digital professionals from Africa. Every week new users joined, new investors showed interest, and new opportunities kept appearing. Her team had grown too. The company now employed dozens of people who believed in the same vision she once built alone during long nights in her small home office. Sometimes Amara would pause during busy days and remember those difficult moments from the past. She remembered the job rejections after university. She remembered the quiet nights working while the rest of the world slept. And she remembered the painful dinner where her husband laughed and called her poor and useless in front of everyone. But those memories no longer hurt the way they once did. Instead, they reminded her how far she had come. Amara had learned something powerful through her journey. Success wasn't just about the money her company now earned or the international recognition she received. Those things were important, but they were not the greatest victory. The real victory was proving that determination, patience, and belief in yourself can change your entire life. Sometimes the strongest people are the quiet ones, the ones who keep working even when nobody believes in them. And in the end, quiet determination can change everything.